So there was a lot of parallels there. So kind of growing up, I kind of used that as a benchmark for me. Um, so music, like I said, it's been a driving thing for me. Throughout the years leading up to me leaving that second marriage, there was several songs that I used for healing. One of the songs that I used was by the Pretenders, titled "I'll Stand by You," and I'm sure you're familiar with the song.
I am.
And but the words were exactly what I needed to tell little Brad.
Hmm.
And for me, the song was my way of speaking to him through the words of that song. And it was a message I, continually told him that I would stand by him and that I wouldn't let anybody hurt him any longer. And I started to make that transition of taking responsibility for him and his actions. And until I went back, I wasn't prepared to move forward with my life as an adult.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. And so that was a very important song. And what you said, what the difference is going through the healing process and making a conscious decision to go back and revisit him, his feelings, his emotions, his fears, being responsible for all of his feelings and fears and thoughts and behavior, as well as my own in present day. I had to be responsible for both sets of feelings and emotions and alleviate him from his responsibility by taking that on myself, because in essence, it was all mine to take. And so that was the start of that transition, is when I made a decision to take responsibility for him, and in turn taking responsibility for myself and saying, this isn't right. I am not the person I was meant to be at 50 years old. And leaving that very controlling marriage after 22 years gave me a window to move in a different direction. And my third marriage is a complete opposite of my first two marriages. So the opportunity for growth is unlimited in my third and final marriage that I'm in now, because I have the right, I have the opportunity, and I've been given the option to move forward as an adult in this marriage, where I wasn't allowed to do that in the previous two. Does that make sense?
Yep. No,
Okay.
I got it. And back to this notion of really finally claiming personal responsibility for yourself, for your life, for your happiness.
Mm-hmm.
When you weren't doing that, were you kind of a blamer, or was it just that you really just let go and just went with the flow, and you just went wherever a wife or a boss or anyone was going to lead you?
Exactly the second one. I didn't really blame. I know that it's real tempting for people to go, well, I'm this way because of my mother, because of my father. And I mean, I went down that road a few times. One of the points that I wanted to bring up, we were talking before we went on, currently, in the news, Netflix has a special on the Aaron Hernandez story. And I find it very ironic that when I listen to his story and I look at his background, he had a tendency to blame. Well, he blamed his mother. I mean, that was something that, he blamed his mother for what his father had done. There was obviously abuse, with him and his father and his brother, and so I looked at his story and I went, and it's a sad story, because he ended up in a really bad place, obviously. But there was a lot of similarities and parallels there. He did point the finger. He did blame others. He did not take personal responsibility for who he was as a man. but he had the same similar scenarios that I lived through, and I'm still alive. So that is something that hopefully people can relate to if they look at his story and look at my story and go, it is possible to move beyond the baggage or the hurt or the tears or without pointing fingers. And I just kind of look at where would he be if he took 100% responsibility for his actions and 100% responsibility of who he was and not what he was in his family background, with all the bad stories of what went on with his father and stuff. So that's just an example to kind of match it up with where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Yeah. In my own experience and with all the men I've talked to, it's impossible to heal or to change if you aren't willing to take responsibility first.
Right.
Yeah. But I've mentioned it many times, but I certainly had a fear of responsibility because I thought that was synonymous with blame. Was that at all kind of your mindset?
Yeah, similar. Yes. Similar. I mean, as far as taking the responsibility and then you're accepting the blame, you're accepting the perspective of blaming yourself, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I thought you were. I thought that's where you were going with it. Right, and that was definitely part of my lack of interest in doing that. It's because it's like, well, I'm not taking that on. I mean, I didn't do these things. I'm not going to take that on. But there really is a difference there between accepting the blame and accepting the responsibility. I think accepting the blame is you accepting a negative aspect of your life, but accepting responsibility, you're accepting a positive aspect of your life.
Right.
And there's a big difference between those two. One is very dark, one is very light. And yeah, it's important to differentiate the right one.
Yeah.
And the differences.
Because nobody will always have 100% control over all the circumstances of their life. But what
correct.
we can control is our reaction, like what we do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely.
And that can't be that can't unfold without taking personal responsibility.
And it's lacking. Just 2020. We look around at news stories or Hollywood or all the different stories that we are inundated with and that we hear about every day or that we watch on Netflix or Hulu or cable TV or whatever, and it's real prevalent as far as the lack of personal responsibility or the lack of, well, that's not my fault. That's not my fault, and this was done to me, and because this was done to me, I feel entitled for the rest of my life. And that's real prevalent. And I can tell your listeners, that's really a bad place to be in. I can speak from personal experience that I wasted 50 years of my life in that mindset. And wow, I mean, can't change those 50 years, but I can change my next 50. And that's the direction I'm heading in.
Cool. And I know we've talked before. I asked about this too because of just that phrase. So, do you really believe you wasted 50 years, or were there some nuggets, some gifts? Did it need that to get to where you are today, or does it really feel like a lot of wasted time?
I don't necessarily know if it's well, I guess wasting isn't really a good term. I was just looking at my notes. I guess I wish in my heart that I would have figured it out sooner, because it would have given me more time to help more people and become a stronger person and to be a person that contributes to society in a more productive, strong, healthy way. If it would have happened 20 years ago, then I would have more time. And so, I'm kind of halfway here. And it's like,